Module 10 of the Tribal Data Toolbox training session, and this session is on importing and entering your AQS sampling methodology into the Toolbox. Now, the reason we need to do that is that Toolbox needs to know what your sampling methodologies are in order to start generating your AQS-ready files for you. So we have some initial steps that we need to do in the Toolbox before we can generate the AQS-ready files. So, first off, we must have already set up our site and monitoring data in AQS. And the reason is because the Toolbox needs the information that you use to set up your site and monitor in order to be able to generate those AQS-ready files. So if you've not set up your site and monitor in AQS yet, you will need to do that before you can use the Toolbox to generate AQS-ready files. And we have videos on how to do that, and we also recommend you take a look at the AQS training manual on steps of how to set up your site and sampler in AQS. That being said, I have already set up my fake sites and samplers in AQS, so I am good to go. And one thing I do still need to do is that remember when I set up my sites many eons ago, it seems, and back in Module 3, we didn't know what our AQS site ID for one of the samplers was. We only had the AQS site ID for one of the sites. So we need to go back into the site records in the Toolbox and add the AQS site ID for our other site. So we are going to go back into the new users fast track to do this because we have to access that form where our site information is. So let's do that. Let's click on new users fast track and we go to add sites. Remember that when you click on add sites, you also have the ability to edit site data. So we click add sites and that opens up this form, and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller because I like seeing it that way. It's easier for me. When you first open up this form, it opens up as a blank form, and that's because the Toolbox expects that you are entering a new site. So if you want to edit site data, you have to use these navigation buttons on the left-hand side of the form, and we're going to use that and go back one and see what site that is. So we go back one, and that takes us to S98. Notice the AQS site ID is already filled in. That's the one I had when I set up my site in the Toolbox. So we don't need to do anything with that. But for our other site, which is site S46, notice the AQS site ID is empty. So I remember that to establish your AQS site ID, you usually work with your EPA regional liaison. And so me and my EPA regional liaison work together, and we figured out what AQS site ID we're going to use for this site. So that is 0025. So I need to go over and tab into that AQS site ID field and enter 0025. Remember, the AQS site ID is always 4 digits, and that is all the Toolbox will allow you to enter is 4 digits. So that is all I need to do to get that AQS site ID in for this site. So there's no other sites I have that don't have AQS site IDs, so I'm done with this form. So I'm going to click on the exit form button, and now what I want to do is add the AQS sampler method. Remember that when you add the AQS sampler method, this is a one-time only thing unless you add a sampler, or if you change something about your sampler. Let's say you were monitoring for PM 2.5 and it wasn't a co-located site, but now it is a co-located site. Now you need to change the parameter code. You would have to do this again. But for routine stuff, you only have to add the AQS sampler methodology to the Toolbox once. And that's why this is on the new users fast track, because it's not something that you do routinely. So it's not on the continuous and meteorological data fast track. So just remember to add your AQS sampler method, you need to go to the new users fast track, or you can also access it from the main switchboard, of course. So I'm going to click on that button and see what happens. So this brings up this new form, and there's 2 options on this form. There's 2 different buttons. So there's the first button that says import monitor protocol data from AQS. Now, just an explanation, monitor protocol data are sampling methodologies. The monitor protocols is what they are called in AQS. What they consist of is the pollutant code, the method code, the unit code, the duration code. So all of those things that you need to associate with your data in AQS is considered monitor protocol data. Remember that these codes are included in every single row of the data file that you submit to AQS. So this is the way that AQS communicates with the Toolbox, and they tell each other what the data are. So the first button is for importing monitor protocol directly from AQS. So you would use this button if someone or you has already submitted sampling data to AQS for your sampler. So if someone in the past, before you got your job, had been submitting data to AQS for that sampler, that protocol data is already in AQS, and you can just download it and put it into the Toolbox. If this is a new monitor that you've never submitted any data to AQS for, and no one else in your organization or before you has ever submitted to AQS for the sampler, then you can manually add your protocol data, and we will demonstrate both of these for my fake sites. And if you're not sure, like, oh no, I don't know if anyone's ever submitted data before, we can use that first step and check if the monitor protocol data are in AQS. And if they are, great, and if they're not, then we can manually add them to the Toolbox. For my imaginary ozone sampler, I'm going to download the sampling methodology file from AQS and import it into the Toolbox. For my PM 2.5 sampler and my metadata, I'm going to manually enter the AQS sampling methodologies.